I'm sitting here at my kitchen table, staring at a cup of coffee that's gone cold, trying to wrap my head around the chaos that's become my life. I don't know if this is a cry for help, a rant, or just a way to get all these emotions out. But here I am. Let me start from the beginning. My wife, Lily, is a hairdresser. She's been in the business for about 8 years, and she's good at what she does. Better than good, really. Clients love her. She has this way of making people feel comfortable, like they've known her forever. It's one of the things I fell in love with when we first met. Her warmth, her ability to connect. She could make anyone feel like the most important person in the room. But now I'm wondering if she's too good at it. It started innocently enough, or at least that's how it seemed. About 3 months ago, Lily mentioned a new client, Greg. She said he was funny, a little quirky, and tipped well. She talked about him the way she talked about most clients, casually, like he was just another name on her schedule. I didn't think much of it at the time. Why would I? As the weeks went by, though, his name started coming up more often. Greg said this, Greg did that, Greg told me about this great Italian place we should try. Again, I brushed it off. I wanted to be the kind of husband who didn't overreact, who trusted his wife implicitly. Then came the late nights. Lily started staying at the salon after hours. She said it was for extra appointments, that business was booming, and she didn't want to turn clients away. And I believed her because why wouldn't I? It wasn't until one of those late nights that the first thread of doubt began to unravel. I decided to surprise her. I showed up at the salon with coffee, thinking she'd be thrilled to see me. But when I got there, the lights were off and the doors were locked. I called her, and she answered on the third ring, sounding out of breath. "Hey," she said, her voice cheerful but rushed. "I'm at the salon. What's up?" I stared at the darkened windows, my stomach tightening. "I'm here too," I said. "Where are you?" There was a pause, just a fraction too long. "Oh, I just stepped out to grab a snack," she said. "Be back in a bit." She wasn't at the salon. I didn't press her then, but the seed of suspicion was planted. It wasn't until a few weeks later that I had something concrete. A manila envelope appeared in our mailbox. No return address. Inside were photos, grainy but clear enough to recognize her and Greg sitting in a park together. It wasn't incriminating at first glance. They weren't touching or kissing. But the way they leaned toward each other, the smiles they shared, it felt too intimate for just a client. I confronted Lily that night, and she brushed it off. "He's a friend," she said. "He's been going through a tough time, and I was just being a good listener." Maybe I was naive, but I wanted to believe her. I wanted to believe that the woman I married wouldn't betray me. So I let it go. But I couldn't shake the feeling that there was more to the story. And the more I looked, the more I found. After that night, I started paying closer attention. It wasn't intentional at first, just little things I couldn't help but notice. Her phone was always on silent, face down on the table. She started dressing differently, wearing clothes she hadn't touched in years. And then there were the excuses. Last-minute errands, spontaneous outings with friends whose names I couldn't recall. Still, I didn't want to jump to conclusions. Maybe I was overthinking things. Maybe I was just insecure. But deep down, I knew something wasn't right. A few weeks later, I got my answer. It was a Saturday, and Lily had the day off, or so she'd said. She mentioned wanting to run a few errands, but when she left the house, she was dressed more like she was going to a party than the grocery store. Tight jeans, a fitted blouse, heels, none of it screamed, "I'm grabbing milk and bread." I waited for her to leave and decided to follow her. Yeah, I know. Not my proudest moment, but I needed to know the truth. She drove across town to a cafe I'd never been to. She parked, got out, and walked inside. I stayed in my car, heart pounding as I debated what to do. 5 minutes passed, then 10. Just when I thought I'd imagined the worst, Greg showed up. He walked in like he owned the place, and not 5 minutes later, they were sitting together in a booth by the window. It wasn't what they did that set me off. It was how they looked at each other. The way she smiled at him, leaning forward as if he were the most fascinating person in the world. I recognized that smile. It was the same one she used to give me. I sat there for what felt like hours, trying to decide whether to storm in or drive away. Eventually, I chose neither. I grabbed my phone, snapped a picture of them through the window, and left. That night, I couldn't sleep. The image of them together played on a loop in my mind. I kept asking myself the same questions. How long had this been going on? Was it my fault? Did I miss the signs? Or did she just stop caring about hiding it? The next morning, I confronted her. I showed her the picture and asked her point blank, "What's going on between you and Greg?" Her face went pale, and for a moment, I thought she might tell me the truth. But then she laughed, a short, bitter sound that sent a chill down my spine. "Are you serious right now?" she said, crossing her arms. "You're spying on me? Don't turn this around on me, Lily." I shot back. "I deserve an explanation." She rolled her eyes and sank into the couch. "Greg is a friend. That's it. I can't believe you'd think I'd cheat on you." I wanted to believe her. I really did. But her tone, her body language, it all screamed deflection. She wasn't defending herself because she was innocent. She was doing it because she'd been caught. I left it at that, but my mind wouldn't rest. Over the next few days, I became a man possessed. I checked her phone when she wasn't looking, searched for clues in her car, even went through her laptop. I hated myself for it, but I couldn't stop. And then I found the messages. The messages weren't hidden. Not really. They were right there on her laptop, in an email account she clearly thought I'd never check. It started innocent enough, messages about hair appointments and funny anecdotes about Greg's life. But as I scrolled back through the months, I saw the shift. The jokes became more personal, the tone more intimate. She started signing off with things like, "Miss you already," and "Can't wait to see you again." And Greg? He wasn't holding back either. There was one email that made my stomach drop. "I had such a great time with you last night. You have no idea how much you mean to me. Can't wait to see you again soon." Last night, I clenched my fists, staring at the screen. This wasn't just some harmless friendship. This was a full-blown emotional affair. And who knows how far it had gone beyond that. I printed out every email, every piece of evidence I could find, and stored it in a folder. My hands were trembling as I placed it in my desk drawer. When Lily came home that evening, I tried to act normal, but I could feel the tension radiating off me like heat. She kissed me on the cheek, asked how my day was, and started chatting about dinner plans as if nothing had happened. It was infuriating, how easily she slipped into her routine, completely unaware of the storm brewing inside me. That night, as she slept beside me, I stared at the ceiling, wondering what my next move should be. Confront her? Call Greg? Talk to a lawyer? A part of me wanted to burn it all down, to expose them both and watch their little secret implode. But another part of me hesitated. I wasn't ready to let go. Not yet. The next day, I made a decision. I called out of work and went to Greg's workplace. It wasn't hard to find. Lily had mentioned it enough times. He worked at a car dealership downtown, the kind of place with flashy signs and an overenthusiastic sales team. When I walked in, I asked for him by name. The receptionist looked confused at first, but she paged him anyway. A few minutes later, he appeared. A tall, confident guy with a smug smile that made my blood boil. "Hey," he said, extending a hand. "Greg, how can I help you?" I ignored his hand and stepped closer, lowering my voice so no one else could hear. "We need to talk. About Lily." His smile faltered, just for a second. "I'm sorry, who are you?" "I'm her husband." That wiped the smile off his face. "Look," I continued, "I don't know what you think you're doing, but it ends now. Whatever's going on between you two, whatever you think this is, it's over." He shifted uncomfortably, glancing around as if looking for an escape. "I think you've got the wrong idea," he said, his voice unsteady. "Don't lie to me," I snapped, stepping even closer. "I've seen the emails, the pictures. I know what's been going on. You might think you're clever, but trust me, you're not." For a moment, he just stared at me, his face pale. Then he straightened up, crossing his arms. "Look, man, I don't know what you think you saw, but Lily's the one who started this. She's the one who came to me." His words hit me like a punch to the gut. "Lily came to you?" "Yeah," he said, his tone smug now. "She told me things weren't working out between you two, that she wasn't happy. I'm just the guy who listened." I wanted to hit him, to wipe that smug look off his face, but I held back. Losing my temper wouldn't fix anything. You're a liar, I said, my voice cold. Am I? He shot back. Ask her yourself. And with that, he turned and walked away, leaving me standing there, seething. When I got home that night, Lily was waiting for me. She looked worried, like she could sense that something had shifted. Where were you? She asked. I dropped my keys on the counter and stared at her for a long moment. With Greg, I said simply. Her face froze. Her eyes widening as she stared at me. I could see the wheels turning in her head, trying to figure out how much I knew. You talked to Greg? She asked, her voice carefully neutral. Yeah, I replied, crossing my arms. And he had plenty to say. She laughed nervously, brushing a strand of hair behind her ear. I don't know what he told you, but whatever it is, he's lying. He's always exaggerating things. Exaggerating? I stepped closer, lowering my voice. So, the emails I found, those were exaggerations too? Or the picture of you two at the cafe? Or the late nights at the salon that you somehow forgot to mention? Her mouth opened, but no sound came out. For the first time in weeks, I saw her confidence crack. Look, it's not what you think, she said finally. Greg and I, there's nothing serious going on. It's just what, Lily? I pressed, my voice rising. Just an innocent little flirtation? Just a friendship with secret emails and late-night meetups? Don't insult my intelligence. Tears welled up in her eyes, and for a second, I almost felt bad. Almost. I didn't mean for this to happen, she whispered. I was lonely, okay? You've been so focused on work, on everything else, and I didn't know how to talk to you. I shook my head, incredulous. So your solution was to talk to him? To run to Greg instead of your husband? Do you have any idea what you've done to us? I know, she said, her voice breaking. I messed up, but it didn't mean anything. I swear, it didn't. Didn't mean anything? I repeated, my voice cold. You don't risk your marriage for something that doesn't mean anything, Lily. That's not how this works. The room was silent except for her quiet sobs. I wanted to yell, to demand answers, but I was too tired. The weight of everything was crushing me, and I couldn't take it anymore. I need some time to think, I said finally, grabbing my jacket. Don't follow me. Don't call me. Just leave me alone. Before she could respond, I walked out the door and into the cold night air. I spent hours driving aimlessly, my mind racing. How had it come to this? I thought we had a solid marriage. Sure, we had our problems. Who doesn't? But I never thought it would lead to this. Greg's words kept replaying in my head. She's the one who came to me. Was that true? Had she really been so unhappy that she turned to someone else? Or was Greg just trying to save face, throwing her under the bus to cover his own tracks? I didn't know what to believe anymore. Around midnight, I found myself parked outside my brother's house. He's the only person I could think of who wouldn't judge me, who would just listen. I knocked on his door, and when he opened it, I didn't even have to say anything. One look at my face, and he knew something was wrong. Come in, he said, stepping aside. I spent the next 2 hours unloading everything. Lily, Greg, the emails, the confrontation. He listened quietly, only interrupting to ask a question or clarify something. When I finally finished, he leaned back in his chair, his expression grim. You have two choices, he said. You either fight for your marriage, or you end it. But whatever you do, you need to decide soon, because the longer this drags out, the worse it's going to get. I don't know if I can fight for this, I admitted. I don't know if I want to. Then don't, he said simply. But if you're done, be done. Don't let her string you along. You deserve better than that. He was right, of course. But knowing that didn't make the decision any easier. When I got home the next morning, Lily was waiting for me in the living room. She looked like she hadn't slept all night. I thought you might not come back, she said softly. Neither did I replied, sitting down across from her. We sat in silence for a while, the weight of everything hanging between us. Finally, I spoke. I need to know the truth, I said. All of it. No more lies, no more half-truths. If you want any chance of fixing this, you owe me that much. She hesitated, wringing her hands. Okay, she said finally. I'll tell you everything. Lily sat across from me, her hands trembling as she fiddled with the hem of her shirt. For the first time in what felt like forever, she looked vulnerable, small, like the weight of her lies had finally caught up with her. "Where do you want me to start?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "Start with Greg," I said, my tone sharper than I intended. "How did it begin?" She swallowed hard and avoided my gaze. "He came into the salon a few months ago. At first, it was just normal stuff, small talk while I cut his hair. He was funny, charming. He made me laugh in a way I hadn't in a long time." I felt a pang of guilt at her words, but I buried it beneath the anger boiling in my chest. "And then?" I prompted, my voice cold. "And then? I don't know. He started coming in more often. He'd make appointments he didn't really need, just to see me. He'd bring coffee, ask about my day. It felt nice, having someone pay attention to me like that." I clenched my fists, trying to keep my emotions in check. "You didn't think to tell him to stop? To set boundaries?" "I didn't realize what was happening," she said defensively. "Not at first. And by the time I did, it felt too late. He'd become a friend." "A friend," I repeated bitterly. "Friends don't send emails about how much they miss each other, Lily. Friends don't meet in cafes or laugh about how miserable someone's marriage is." Her face crumpled, tears spilling down her cheeks. "I know," she whispered. "I know I messed up. I should have stopped it before it got out of hand. But it wasn't serious. I swear, it wasn't." "Not serious?" I snapped, leaning forward. "You're telling me all those late nights, all those lies, they were nothing? How stupid do you think I am?" Her head shot up, and for the first time, she looked angry. "I'm not saying it was nothing," she said, her voice shaking. "I'm saying it wasn't what you think. It wasn't about you. I wasn't trying to hurt you." "Well, congratulations," I said bitterly. "You did anyway." The room fell silent after that, the weight of our conversation pressing down on both of us. I felt drained, like every ounce of energy had been sucked out of me. I wanted to scream, to throw something, to make her feel a fraction of the pain she'd caused me. But instead, I just sat there, staring at the woman I used to trust more than anyone in the world. "Is there anything else I need to know?" I asked finally. She hesitated, her hands twisting together in her lap. "We kissed," she admitted, her voice barely audible. My heart sank. I had suspected it, but hearing her say the words out loud felt like a punch to the gut. "How many times?" I asked through gritted teeth. "Twice," she said quickly. "It happened twice, and I regretted it both times. That's why I ended it, Ethan. I told him we couldn't keep seeing each other, that it was wrong. That's the truth." I wanted to believe her. God, I wanted to believe her, but I didn't know if I could. The rest of the day passed in a blur. Lily stayed home, giving me space, while I tried to process everything she had told me. My emotions swung wildly, from anger to sadness to a strange, hollow numbness. I kept asking myself the same question. Was there any way forward from this? I wasn't sure. By the time night fell, I had made up my mind. "I need you to leave," I said as we sat across from each other at the dinner table. Lily's eyes widened in shock. "Ethan, no. Please, we can work through this." "I don't know if we can," I said, my voice breaking. "I need time, Lily. Time to think, to figure out if this marriage can even be saved. And I can't do that with you here." She started to cry, but I didn't back down. "I'll stay with a friend," she said finally, her voice trembling. "But, Ethan, please don't give up on us. I love you." I didn't respond. As I watched her pack a bag and walk out the door, I felt an overwhelming sense of loss. She said she loved me. But was that enough? The house felt eerily quiet after Lily left. Every sound, the creak of a floorboard, the hum of the fridge, seemed louder, more intrusive. I sat in the living room, staring at the empty spot on the couch where she'd been just hours before, trying to process what had happened. Was this really my life now? I thought about the emails, the photos, her tearful confession. She said she loved me, but how could someone who loved you betray you like that? Did I even want her love anymore? That night, I slept on the couch, though I barely closed my eyes. Every time I drifted off, I'd see them, Lily and Greg, laughing, kissing, tearing apart everything we'd built. The next morning, I woke up feeling like a shell of myself. I couldn't sit in that house anymore, surrounded by memories of a life that suddenly felt like a lie. So I got in my car and drove. No destination, no plan, just the road and my thoughts. After an hour or so, I ended up at a park Lily and I used to visit when we first started dating. It was one of those places that had once felt like ours, a sanctuary from the rest of the world. Now, it just felt hollow. I parked the car and sat there for a while, watching families stroll by, kids chasing each other around the playground. It all seemed so normal, so simple. How had my life gotten so complicated? My phone buzzed on the seat beside me. I glanced down and saw a message from Lily. Lily, I'm staying with Monica. Please let me know when you're ready to talk. I stared at the screen, my thumb hovering over the keyboard. But I didn't reply. Not yet. Later that day, I called my best friend, Ryan. We hadn't talked much lately. Life had gotten in the way, as it always does. But I knew he'd understand. When he answered, his voice was cheerful, oblivious to the storm in my life. Ethan, long time, man. What's up? Ryan, I said, my voice heavy. I need to talk. Can I come over? He didn't hesitate. Of course. Everything okay? Not even close, I replied. An hour later, I was sitting in Ryan's living room, spilling my guts. I told him everything. Lily's affair, the lies, the confrontation with Greg. I expected him to be angry on my behalf, but instead, he just listened, his expression a mix of shock and sadness. Damn, man, he said when I finished. I don't even know what to say. Neither do I admitted. That's the problem. Ryan leaned back, crossing his arms. What do you want to do? I don't know, I said honestly. Part of me wants to forgive her, try to move on. But another part of me, I don't know if I can ever trust her again. He nodded slowly. Trust is a tricky thing. Once it's broken, it's hard to rebuild. But it's not impossible. Do you think I should try? I asked, my voice quiet. Ryan was silent for a moment, then said, That's not a question I can answer, Ethan. Only you know if she's worth it. That night, I sat in my car outside the house, staring at the front door. It felt like a fortress now, something I couldn't bring myself to step inside. My life was in shambles, and I didn't know how to put the pieces back together. But one thing was clear. I couldn't keep running from this. If I was going to figure out what came next, I had to face it head on. I pulled out my phone and opened Lily's message. My fingers hovered over the keyboard for a long moment before I finally typed. We'll talk. Tomorrow. The next morning, I felt sick to my stomach. I told Lily we'd talk, but I still didn't know what I wanted to say. Every time I thought about her betrayal, a fresh wave of anger and sadness washed over me. I met her at a neutral spot, a park halfway between Monica's house and ours. She was already there when I arrived, sitting on a bench and clutching a coffee cup like it was a lifeline. Hey, she said softly when she saw me. I nodded and sat down a few feet away, keeping a safe distance between us. I've thought a lot about what you said, she began, her voice trembling. And I know I don't deserve another chance. But I love you, Ethan. I really do. And I'm willing to do whatever it takes to prove it to you. I stared at her, trying to find a trace of the woman I fell in love with. How do I trust you again? I asked finally. I'll go to counseling, she said quickly. Individual therapy, couples therapy, whatever you want. I'll give you access to everything. No secrets, no lies. I don't want to lose you. Her words sounded sincere, but after everything, sincerity felt like a mask she could put on and take off at will. I don't know if that's enough, I admitted. In the days that followed, I struggled to make sense of what I wanted. Lily kept her word. She started therapy and sent me updates, but I kept my distance. Part of me wanted to forgive her, to find a way back to the life we had before. But another part of me, the part that saw Greg's smug face every time I closed my eyes, couldn't let go of the betrayal. Ryan encouraged me to take my time. Don't let her pressure you into a decision, he said. This is your life, Ethan. Make sure you're doing what's best for you. So I waited. I read the emails over and over, trying to make sense of how the woman I trusted could do something like this. And one night, I made a decision. I called Lily and told her I was willing to try counseling, but with conditions. I need you to cut off all contact with Greg, I said firmly. No excuses, no exceptions. Of course, she said immediately. I already blocked his number. I'll do whatever you need. And I want a post-nuptial agreement, I continued. She hesitated. A post-nup? Yes, I said. If this happens again, I'm not going to fight over assets or finances. You sign everything over to me. No arguments. Her voice wavered, but she agreed. Okay, if that's what it takes, I'll sign it. We started counseling the following week. It was awkward at first, sitting in a room with a stranger and airing all our dirty laundry. But the therapist, a calm, older man named Dr. Harris, was good at his job. Lily admitted to feeling neglected in our marriage, and while it hurt to hear, I couldn't deny that I'd been more focused on work than on her. But Dr. Harris didn't let her off the hook, either. He made her confront the choices she'd made, the lies she'd told, and the damage she'd caused. It was a painful process, but it felt like progress. One night, after a particularly emotional session, Lily broke down in tears. I'm so sorry, she said, sobbing into her hands. I don't know how I could have done this to you. You didn't deserve it. For the first time, I felt like she truly understood the depth of her betrayal, and for the first time, I considered the possibility of forgiving her. But then something happened that changed everything. Greg showed up at my work. I was in the middle of a meeting when my assistant knocked on the door, looking flustered. There's a man here asking to see you. He says it's urgent. I stepped out of the conference room and found Greg leaning casually against the reception desk. What the hell are you doing here? I hissed, keeping my voice low. He smirked. I thought we should talk. There's nothing to talk about, I snapped. Oh, I think there is, he said, his tone mocking. You see, Lily and I had something special, and I'm not convinced she's ready to let it go. I saw red. Stay away from her, I growled. If you come near her, or me again, I'll make sure you regret it. He raised his hands in mock surrender. Relax, man. I just thought you should know the truth. And then he walked out, leaving me seething. When I told Lily what had happened, she was horrified. I didn't know he'd do that, she said, her face pale. I swear, Ethan, I haven't talked to him since we started counseling. I believe you, I said, but I don't believe him, and I'm not going to let him ruin this marriage or my life, any more than he already has. I hired a lawyer and filed a restraining order against Greg. I also reached out to his employer, sharing the emails and messages that proved he'd been interfering in my marriage. A week later, I learned he'd been fired. It wasn't much, but it felt like a victory. Lily, meanwhile, continued to work on herself. She cut her hours at the salon to spend more time at home and stayed committed to therapy. I could see her trying, and little by little, the cracks in our marriage began to heal. It's been 6 months since everything came to light, and while things aren't perfect, they're better. I won't lie. There are still days when I struggle to trust Lily, when the memories of her betrayal come rushing back. But I'm learning to let go, to focus on the progress we've made instead of the mistakes of the past. Forgiveness is a process, not a destination. I don't know what the future holds, but for now, we're taking it one day at a time.